Please call the meeting to order, please. Welcome everybody. Turning out. We'll start again. All right. Right. Okay. I think we are all present, so there are no apologies for absence or substitutions. So thank you very, very much. If we could just go very quickly around the table to introduce ourselves, because we have some officers here who some people might not know, and also for the purposes of those people who are joining the meeting online. So if we start at, well,
okay, start with me. Good evening, everybody. I'm Rosita Page, Ullerthorpe Division.
Hello there, Councillor Jonathan Bateman, ward member from Misterton.
Amanda Nunn, ward member for Bosworth and vice chair of this committee.
Catherine Parsons, Democratic Service Officer. Claire Pattinson, Monitoring Officer.
David Gare, member for Lutterworth East.
Clive Mason, interim deputy chief executive, section 151 officer.
Rachel Ashley Corrant, chief internal auditor. Julie Young, head of legal services and deputy monitoring officer.
Stuart Don, council's information governance officer.
Barbara Johnson, Logan Ward.
Stuart Finan, Little Bowden Ward.
Rose Foreman, Harbour Welland.
Right, thank you very much everybody for that. Second item is the declaration of members' interest. Does anybody have interest they need to declare to the meeting? No? Okay, thank you very much for that. Item 3 then, the draft minutes of the Audit and Standards Committee of 26th of July 2023. I have somebody to propose those are an accurate record of that meeting. Sorry, Councillor Nunn.
Yeah, I'm happy to propose those.
Right, thank you. Somebody to second them. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Okay. Those in favour, right. Okay. Those in favour of accepting those minutes as a true and accurate record. Okay. No objections. Right. Any matters arising from those minutes? Okay, do I know matters arising from the minutes? Thank you very much. I'll sign those off then. Where have they gone? Oh, right. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we come to the item 4. Item 4, Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review Letter. I'll hand you over to Stuart, who's going to take us through that. Thank you, Stuart.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is a simple report just to basically give you a flavour of our performance against the regulators' assessment of how we handle complaints, etc. They issue a letter every year, 19th of July this year, and it reports on the previous financial year, for year 22-23. There were 20 responses from the Ombudsman this year, which resulted in 11 full-scale investigations undertaken by them. There were no upheld complaints at all in relation to those 11 that were investigated. There is a typo on that there. It should say 26th of July 22 in the header, but it should be 23. Yeah, the zero uphold rate is very good. It should give you assurance that we're dealing with complaints and handling services at the appropriate level, really. There is a caveat on the numbers that we've received in the sense that we've got a 0 this year. Anything higher than that next year may look a bit alarming, but obviously it's in context. But other than that, there's nothing else to say. It's pretty straightforward. Have you got any questions?
Councillor Page.
Thank you. That's well done, Stuart. 11, that's really good. Thank you for the report. Just a quick question, Stuart. These are our, which is escalating to the Ombudsman. So what do we do? And, you know, with internal complaints, do we hold a record for those? You know, if somebody goes to stage 1 or 2, and that's all I'm asking. Thank you, Stuart.
Yes, we do. We have a database of complaints that monitors informals that we're aware of and formal stage 1 and 2 complaints. Then obviously, as they get escalated to the regulator, they notify us that they've received a complaint and we log that as well. So we check our data against their data when it comes in.
Right, question, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just thinking in terms of a comparison, I was interested to know whether you would describe 11 as being on the low side or high or about in the middle.
20 referrals for an organisation this size is quite high, but looking at the context of the complaints that we had, the vast majority of these submissions were single issue planning complaints. So actually it's not reflective of what we normally have. It would normally be typically around about 7 or 8.
Anyone else? Okay. Yes.
If I could just add, just for members' assurance, of course, Stuart produces regular reports on the number of complaints that have been received, and that is reviewed on a regular basis by the management team, so that the corporate management team is alive to where there may be particular issues, where there may be particular spikes in activity about complaints, for example, to do with telephone systems and things like that, so that management team can respond to that sort of thing in a timely fashion. So it's not a case that the figures exist in isolation, if you like. It is actively monitored and reported through by Stuart. This is essentially the top of the iceberg in terms of the ones that go all the way and aren't resolved elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Well, thank you very much, Stuart. That reflects very well on your team and I think the council in general. Thank you. Okay, we move on to item 5, the internal audit 23-24 progress and performance update. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the latest update on the delivery of this year's internal audit plan. So as usual, we've provided a copy of the internal audit plan from page 5 of the first appendix. This provides a list of all of the audits within the plan and the status as at the time of producing this report, and the outcome of all of those that have been finalised as well. So since the last committee meeting, members will note that we've finalised a further 2 audit reports. So these are summarised as usual in section 2.5 of the first appendix. So the first related to enforcement activity. So here we were looking at all of the service areas across the local authority that have an enforcement element to their function. So this is everything from planning through to environmental services, building control, and regulatory services as well. So at the time of producing this report, the council's corporate policy was already under review, so it's quite a timely opportunity for us to be able to give some audit findings and recommendations that could feed into that process. We did also note as part of the audit that a number of the supporting policies were also in need of review. So some actions have been agreed around taking those forward. In terms of the audit findings, we confirmed that there was evidence of staff training in each of the areas. So we know that staff are suitably trained, they're competent to undertake the enforcement roles that they have. Although there's some of the areas that we highlighted for improvement related particularly around record keeping. So making sure that we have a process for logging all cases, whether they're cases that we take forward for enforcement action or whether we decide on a balance of the evidence and the public interest that actually we don't take formal action, but we may take other options forward. So in particular, we were not able, as is noted in the summary, that we're not able to perform sample testing in relation to cases on licensing or environmental services because there is not a log in place to record all of them for us to maybe able to select a sample and look at the evidence. So that did obviously impact upon the assurance opinion we were able to give on the audit and the compliance element. We did see for 3 cases that proceeded to prosecution that evidence was on file of approval, which was in line with your constitution. So that's obviously positive assurance to take forward. And in the cases that we tested generally, key controls have been applied, but there was a lack of evidence in a number of cases of communication around outcomes and making sure that we're complying with the expected timeframes and reporting on those. So those were some areas that were highlighted for taking forward as areas for improvement. We also highlighted, as is noted in the summary, that there was opportunity for better joint working as well. So obviously we work with a number of local authorities. And what we've seen work well with a number of councils is when you have a corporate enforcement group, essentially, that brings together some officers from all different service areas to look at how they apply enforcement and how they're dealing with some of the different risks associated with that. So we made some recommendations around how that could be taken forward. So the second report was in relation to managing major projects. So this is noted on the next stage part of the report. So this was one that fed over from last year's audit plan. So generally, we're able to see that there was good governance in place around the management of projects, seeing that highlight reports are being received and considered. We also looked at procurement activity in particular in relation to those 3 projects in the sample. We're able to confirm compliance with the relevant processes and rules in those cases as well. So we did, however, highlight a number of lessons from those 3 projects, which were perhaps, particularly one of them, quite small in nature compared with some major projects that we may have in the future. And it was really an opportunity to reflect on some of the lessons that have been learnt from those projects. So some of them had actually started prior to the current project management framework being in place. So that was obviously noted where we did find some exceptions. But we also identified within those that we just need to have that consistent use of those key templates and paperwork, including project initiation documents, project plans, but also using highlight reports to make sure we're clearly reflecting the risk status of each of the projects as well. So there's an opportunity within the project highlight report to give a RAG rating, a red, amber or green rating to the project based on the current issues. And we just wanted to see that more consistently used for those projects that we looked at, and they could have been better explained as to the basis for those opinions as well. So overall, we've made some recommendations which hopefully will help inform the review going forward and will feed into the project management framework, and opportunity to reflect on those and how we can strengthen it further. So also within the report is an update on the implementation of audit recommendations. So we have a table on page 10 of the first appendix and table 3, which sets out those actions which have been implemented, of which there are 5. And then there are 17 which are currently overdue. 10 of those fall into the category of being low priority. So we don't consider those to be exposing a risk to the council. They're more nice to have or opportunities to improve efficiency. So we don't tend to focus on those. However, the ones that do factor into the medium priority categories, we have provided you with further details in the second appendix, as usual, Appendix B. So each of those is set out with the original target date and the recommendation, but also the latest update from officers. And we have had a good response from all officers on these and revised deadlines set for all of them, which are provided for the committee this evening in Appendix B. So that is a quick run through of the report, Chair. The other thing I wanted to mention to the committee at this time of the year, believe it or not, we will be starting to think now about developing the internal audit plan for 2024-25. So I just wanted to give the committee a bit of an early notification that we will looking to consult the committee on the content of that. So what we want to do is do a bit of horizon scanning, look at potential areas of risk for the year ahead, and one of the key stages in that is to consult with this committee and get your input on that. So I'll be looking to bring a paper to the next meeting of the Audit and Standards Committee in the new year, and so I was just a bit of an early warning to give it some thought of any areas to bring forward potentially as part of that. And I think that's everything, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions on further detail.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for that very comprehensive report. Any questions from the committee? Right, Councillor Johnson.
I was a bit confused, Rachel, because I've just spotted the 6 and 7 on the pages at the other side. It's got 2 different numbers, and it's a bit confusing in the papers. But yes, I'm with it now. That's okay. But I did want to query the corporate objective under environment and sustainability, the climate emergency action plan. How I mean, really, it's about your system. How do you allocate your budget days? I mean, you take a subject, and how do you get to decide?
Through you, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just respond to that. So, as obviously, I just mentioned that we'll be looking at the audit planning process for 24-25. 25 soon. And obviously all of that factors into that process. We're allocating days as part of that. So what we will be doing, and what we did in compiling this plan, was to identify all of the key corporate objectives and the risks that we needed to give assurance over, and prioritise those as to which would best fit into the internal audit plan. And then it's looking at the number of days we have available and almost slotting those in. So I have an idea of the scope of each of those audits, which is provided in your audit plan, and I have a basis, and that's the basis on which I identify how many days we're likely to need to be able to cover the scope that we've set out. So for this one, for 10 days, obviously that's an average for a number of days for an audit. Some of them, like the enforcement policy compliance, had a very large scope because we were looking at enforcement across a number of service areas. So it's an 18 days allocated there. On the climate emergency action plan, we are specifically looking at your action plan and assurances of the actions that are being taken against that. So it's quite a limited scope, to be honest, in terms of what we can actually do with this audit. So I think that 10 days feels sufficient. If we were to get into the audit and find actually there's a lot more work that needs to be done in this area for any particular reason, I would come back to this committee, or I would speak to Clive and the chair between meetings to get an agreement to amend the audit plan if need be.
So I know you've done that sort of thing before, extended period.
Your microphone, Councillor Johnson.
I know you've done that sort of thing before, Rachel. Yeah. Extended periods. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, right, thank you, Rachel. Any other questions? Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 3, Rachel, on the bottom, the assurance opinion on the enforcement activity. I am just talk me through what you mean by controlled environment, and I know what compliance means, and the organisational impact, because that has been rated as low. So just talk me through what you've looked at and what are we going to do to improve that, please.
Through you, Chair. Okay, so I'm happy to talk through it. So the assurance opinion, as you say, has those 3 categories. So the first is looking at the design of the controls. So applying it to this particular case, we were looking at what policies are in place. Are they fit for purpose? So obviously in this case, the policies were currently subject to review, and also we identified a number of supporting policies which needed review. So on that basis, that would have reduced the design assurance opinion. The other thing that would have brought it down as well is the fact that we don't have a clear process in place for logging referrals as they come in as well. So that's brought that down. So moderate is our mid-range assurance opinion. So it reflects that there are some issues. It's not so bad that actually it can fundamentally undermines the controls in that particular area, but there's definitely actions needed where there's a moderate. So, and that's been acknowledged, and that's in hand in terms of some of the systems work that's taking place within the council. So then the compliance element is looking at the testing of how those policies and how those processes have been applied. So as I say, generally, we were able to see that the policies and procedures that were in place had been applied, but we were not able to perform testing in some areas. So that obviously impacted and brought that assurance opinion down to moderate in that case. So that's how we reached the assurance opinion on that particular audit. In relation to the organisational impact, so this is looking at the level of risk which we think the findings from the audit have exposed the council to as a whole. Now, whilst we've obviously given that mid-range assurance opinion for the control environment and compliance, we didn't feel it would expose the council to particular risk, a high level of risk at this time, because if we'd found case, I suppose when we would have given a higher level of risk on this particular audit would have been if we'd seen cases that have gone through to prosecution without any evidence of a decision-making process being made, looking at the evidential basis, making sure the right officers had approved it, that would have given me a higher risk that we were pursuing things that we weren't following due process. In this case, we weren't seeing that. We were just seeing that some of the general ones that are coming in were not being logged in the right way. So it wasn't that we were taking action and exposing the council to legal challenge or risk. So that's hopefully giving you an overview of our thinking behind those 3 assurance opinions.
Thank you, Rachel. Happy there, Councillor Page? Right, Councillor Finnan.
Hi, thank you. Just looking at the medium grade audits that you've got in the Appendix B, It's just the amended timelines. Is it normal to have a timeline that's the target date that's going to be 2 years different from the revised date? Because that seems quite long.
Through you, Chair. No, it's certainly not normal, and it's certainly not what we would expect at the time of agreeing the audit. But I think in this particular case, we have, and officers might be in a better position to comment on this, but we have had quite a high turnover of management in this particular area. I think that has probably contributed to this. So it's moved forward and then it's not, and there's been delays for various reasons. I think the basis of the responses that we've been given, if it is going to be done, it's going to be done properly, but it obviously needs some lead-in time to do that. So that's probably the latest that I'm able to say. I don't know if there's anything else to add.
Do you want to say anything, Clark? Happy with that, Councillor?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions on item 5? Okay. The audit completion certificate. Sorry, yes, the audit completion certificate 2021. Clive?
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. So this might seem a little bit out of date because we're looking at 2021, but as members are aware, there is in the audit environment at the minute, there is quite an external audit environment, I will say. There is quite a bit of delay nationally between auditors completing their audits. So they completed our external auditors completed the 2021 audit earlier this year, and and part of the process they have to issue a completion certificate. We received that completion certificate in August, and this is the first opportunity to complete the governance circle and bring the audit certificate in front of you to receive it on behalf of the authority. It's just a governance process that, and this completely ties off the 2020-21 audit. And that's all there is, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clive. Any questions on that? Right, Councillor Bateman.
Just one for Clive. Is this going to have the same effect year on year on year, or as in is 21-22 going to come to us in 24 and 23, 20 and so on in like 3 years later?
Touch wood, hopefully not, but I have got 21-22's audit certificate now, which we come to the next audit committee. So something Councillor will talk about in a bit later, but this is a national issue. This is nothing to do with this district council. Our accounts are published on time, in line with the statutory deadlines. It is an issue with national audit, the national audit process and their backlog. I was at a peer review earlier this year, and that authority had 4 years worth of accounts that they were waiting for audit conclusions on. They had done their accounts, but they were waiting for over 4 years. So, I mean, we are well and truly not in that bracket. We are well up there. But it is just, I'm afraid, a symptom of the current external audit market.
Thank you, Clive. Quite happy with that. Absolutely. All right. Okay. So we move on to any urgent or any other business. Clive, do you want to say something about this, or shall I? We covered that.
No, you need to mention both of those.
Okay, right.
So, in respect, there's a couple of items that Councillor Clare is just going to bring to your attention as sort of AOB, if you want to think about that. It's so that we can record the item and members of the committee have had it presented to them for the minutes. You've been informed by me by email, but Councillor Clare will. So if you've got any questions at the end, we can take any questions. Thank you.
I'll just read this. Right. Okay, so the first item is the signing of the 2021-22 annual financial report. Committee members will recall that at the July meeting of the committee that a delegation was given to myself as chairman of this committee and the S151 officer to authorise and sign the annual financial report when the external auditors had confirmed an unqualified opinion. I can confirm that the external auditors notified the council of completion of the audit on the 27th of September. Therefore, myself, the S151 officer, and the external auditor signed the annual financial statement on the 29th of September, the same day that they were published on the council's website, and members of this committee and all members were duly informed. Any questions on that? Okay. Move on to the second item then, which refers to the delay in the completion of the 22-23 annual financial report. The external auditors notified the council on the 28th of September that the audit of the 2022-23 annual financial report would not be completed by the 30th of September deadline, as required by Regulation 10 of the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. As required, the council has published a notice on its website confirming this, and all members of this committee were informed by the S151 officer on the 29th of September. The S151 officer has asked me to confirm to you that the reason for the delay is entirely due to external auditors Mazars LLP and is due to the impact of backlogs in clearing previous year's accounts at other local authorities. This delay should not have any direct consequence on the council or the 471 other councils which find themselves in the same position. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions by anyone for Clive about this, or indeed for Rachel at this point in time? Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
Just one you may not be able to answer, but how many councils would have been affected? You're saying 471 were affected by this. Is that total?
I can put it through you, Chair. Sorry.
Yes,
Through you, Chair. I can put it another way. Only 6 authorities have actually had their accounts completed for 22-23. Okay.
Thank you, Clive. Right, any other business? Well, thank you very much, everyone, for turning up. I think I can declare the meeting closed. Right.